Welcome to It's About Time, where we challenge outdated higher ed models and push for bold student-first reforms. Today, we're talking about one of the toughest challenges in higher education, making college truly affordable. My guest knows this issue inside and out. Eloy Ortiz Oakley is the president and CEO of the College Futures Foundation, a California-based organization working to improve economic mobility for underserved students by helping more of them earn a college credential. Well, Eloy, thanks so much for joining us today. And you've had such a depth of experience with the community college system and now with the College Futures Foundation. We're going to talk about affordability today, as we talked about beforehand. And you've spent a lot of time focusing on affordability in many of your roles. What do you think the biggest challenges are and the points of resistance that we see in fully realizing an affordable higher education experience for our students?
Well, first of all, thank you, David, for having me on your program here. It's great to be with you. I think there's a couple of things. One is there's the cultural aspect of higher education. We are probably the least transparent industry on the planet. So, whether you are, in a four-year institution, you've gone through all sorts of machinations to have different price points and tuition systems depending on who you're serving and who your payer mix is, to, if you're in a community college anywhere across this country, you have a myriad of levels of funding and you have to try to figure out how you're going to serve your students at the same time collect the revenue you need to collect. So we have a very complicated system. And I think in many ways, one would argue that is intentional. So that's one problem. Two, we have, again, the complexity just builds on itself. If you think about the federal and state financial aid systems, there are a myriad of different applications and avenues of access that you have to get students to go through. And when we're talking about affordability, we're talking about everyday working class Americans, low-income Americans, Americans from communities of color, immigrant families. These are not people who have the time nor the resources to figure out all of the machinations. So part of the affordability problem is the intentional complexity problem, which leads to a whole myriad of other issues. And then finally, the fact that we remain rooted in a brick and mortar mentality, that just keeps getting more and more expensive. And then the final thing I'll say is the cost of higher ed is more than the cost of tuition, it's the cost of attendance. So if you're living in a high cost area like California or New York, you're paying quite a lot to go to college. And it's not just tuition, it's the cost of housing. It's the cost of not going to work in order to choose to go to school. So all those things add up to create the affordability problem we have today.
Well, that's great. Thank you for that synopsis. You've tried a lot of things, and you've seen other people try a lot of things to reduce the cost and make higher education more affordable. What are among the things that you thought were the most promising that we need to either continue to pursue or to tweak a bit in order to make them scalable across institutions? I mean, where do you see the biggest promise moving forward?
Well, I'll start with the recent federal legislation on accountability. And to some degree, it's an affordability play as well. And I'll begin with the cost of graduate education. The cost of graduate education has skyrocketed over the last 10 years. Many institutions use their graduate programs to help finance other parts of their university or their college. And so there's been a reckoning lately, the cap on Grad Plus loans or the elimination of Grad Plus loans and the cap on graduate loans is really going to put a squeeze on institutions. So I do think a missing piece in years past has been accountability for the institution to hold down the cost of education. We've had Pell fueling access for many, many years. Certainly over the last 20 years, there's been a significant increase in access across the country. But that money that's been flowing, that Title IV money has been flowing, has not been met by increased accountability on the institution. So we've had these runaway costs. So I think that's starting. Hopefully that will show some restraint and constraint from the institutional leaders to think realistically about how they lower the cost of education. So that will hopefully lead to an increase in the use of technology to lower the cost of education, whether that's, improving the efficiency of your back office operations, or if you're a system, how do you reduce the administrative cost of your organization? So I'm starting to see more and more of that. And the final thing I'll say is something that certainly I've been involved with for many, 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 many years, which is the College Promise movement. And this has been an issue that's been hijacked. The words free college, the word free has been hijacked by many different ideological organizations to mean that there is no skin in the game for the individual. And the reality is that because of the complexity of tuition systems and financial aid systems, if we just took all that money that we're pouring into aid, into the bureaucracy of compliance, and just lowered or eliminated the cost of entry for the lowest income Americans, we would create much better access than we have today, and I would argue at the same cost. So those are some of the things that I think have been going on that I think could significantly lower the cost of attendance for students.
Great. I agree with you 100%. I also think we can't let the cost of instruction off the hook. I mean, the actual cost of faculty and the student-facing side of the institution from an advising standpoint and from a faculty standpoint, what do you see some of the promising strategies there? I mean, we obviously have technology moving us towards better efficiencies and delivery of content in ways that are more digestible, and support systems. Kind of what do you think about how we hold the instructional side of the institution accountable while we're looking at the administrative side and those other barriers?
So I would begin by saying this, that the best way to hold the instructional side of the house accountable is to ensure that the administration is held accountable and creates the right kinds of signals and the right kind of reward system for faculty and instructors. And so a couple of things are going on right now. One is because of technology, whether that's AI-powered apps, or just the significant increase in social networks, learners are getting much more guidance from their peers than they are from their institution. Personally, I think that's a great thing because it creates agency for the learner. They take control of their learning in ways that we haven't been able to do before. So the advising piece is definitely seeing an entire disruption right now. And now you have a lot of startup companies who are going direct to consumer, providing them access to information. A lot of institutions are trying to now add technology. I can't think of an institution that hasn't experimented with a chatbot these days, or that is now thinking about how do we deploy AI agents. All those things, there'll be a lot of hit and miss there, but all those things will continue to revolutionize the way we think about advising. And then to your point on the instruction side, instructors across the country have to figure out how to leverage technology in ways that they haven't been willing to do thus far. I mean, when we went through the pandemic, it was my experience that before then, faculty would come kicking and screaming about how there is no way that they can move their instruction online. Well, all of a sudden we're in a pandemic, and guess what? We figured out ways to do that. Now, I'm not saying it was quality online instruction, but we were able to do that. And for the learner, there's no going back. Now that I got a taste of being able to manage my schedule and have that drive my instruction, not you, the instructor, drive my schedule, there's no going back. So I do think that, academic leaders need to really think about how to leverage technology in ways that create multiple personalized pathways for learners that meet them where they're at. We cannot live in an environment anymore where there's only one mode of instruction, brick and mortar on a traditional semester system, 9 to 3, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That is not going to work for any institution anymore.
No, I think you're absolutely correct, and I appreciate that observation because, access is, we all know, is much more than affordability. I mean, the delivery model is an essential part of providing people the opportunity to participate. And many of our students are doing their work at 2 o'clock in the morning because they have full-time jobs and families, and it's the only time they can get things done, and we're responding to them 24 hours later. And we've got to figure out these ways of continuing to improve access with delivery models that are more conducive to the lifestyles of especially around working adults. So I appreciate you bringing that up. How about employers? We talk a lot about students and we talk a lot about our faculty and internal, but much of what we're producing are products for employers. And how are employers participating, and how should they be participating in kind of this next evolution of access?
Well, I think employers have been feeling the pinch over the last 5-10 years and are trying to figure it out. So you've seen things like employer organized educational opportunities, everything from the Walmart education programs, the Starbucks education programs, Disney Aspire, and then you had the dawn of these intermediaries like Guild. So employers at least figured out that they have to be active participants in the reskilling and upskilling of their own employee base. So that was a positive step forward. The second thing is that there's been a lot of talk and a lot of advancement in this whole notion of skills-based hiring. You've heard, CEOs like Jamie Dimon talk about skills-based hiring. The challenge that we've had is that hasn't trickled down to the actual hiring managers, but there's a lot of activity. Johnny Taylor, I know well, he's the head of SHRM, talks daily about how his organization is moving toward improving skills-based hiring. So I do think that employers have been sort of thinking about this because at the end of the day, this is a race for talent. And talent exists in every community throughout the country, and employers have to send better signals, not just the signals that they've been used to sending, which is, send me somebody with a diploma that mitigates the risk for me when I hire them. Now they actually want to know what the individual can do rather than where the individual got their diploma from. So I think that's an interesting revolution. How long this is going to actually take to stick, we'll see, but there is a whole lot of energy behind it. And I think that's a good thing because it forces employers to really think hard about the kinds of skills that they need rather than the pedigree that they're going to hire for.
Yeah, and I think part of that, in addition to that, we have a currency that we understand called degrees. Right. It's based on Carnegie units and credit hours that are supported by our accreditors and financial aid. And we only know one currency. Right. And so when we talk about a skills-based currency, it's battling
like
against
crypto,
a time-based. Yeah, it's like crypto against the monetary system that we understand. We understand the currency of the credit hours. And, together we've got to figure out a way to make this kind of to break through on whatever the new currency is that equates to or replaces the time-based currency rather than skill-based currency. And I think we still have a challenge to go ahead of it and moving in that direction, because it's so easy to understand the standardization, which was why the Carnegie Unit was created in the first place, was to provide that kind of standardization. So we've got everything from transferability to a recognition of what something's worth. But now we're dependent upon degrees in a way. And I've said that our competency-based approaches are going to take off when we have skills-based hiring as a replacement for degree-based kind of hiring moving forward. So I appreciate those observations. You've had a front row seat in participating in policy as well, both at the state level and
that's where my gray hair comes from.
But at the federal level as well. We can't have this conversation without talking about kind of what are the major policy issues that we need to address. You addressed some of them at the beginning, but what do you see what is turning your hair gray when you're focusing on federal policy at this point and some of the chaos that's emerged in recent months?
Well, certainly seeing the National Guard Marines in my backyard makes my hair gray. But beyond that, so there is obviously there's a lot of chaos in the air these days. But within that chaos, I do see opportunity, because there is, for the first time, sort of an opening up of just going back to the whiteboard and figuring out how to redesign this thing. So, clearly I've worked for a lot of Democrat administrations. I'm a registered Democrat, but that doesn't mean that I haven't been frustrated by federal policy. I worked in the Biden administration. I got a lot of gray hair there, even though there was a lot of promise, because the federal bureaucracy is what it is, and it's very difficult to break through that. So in this moment of complete chaos, and some of us view it as a dismantling of some of the pillars of democracy, there is this moment of opportunity to rethink federal policy, to get states to re-engage in state policy. And I do believe that states need to take more control of their own talent systems. So workforce and post-secondary systems working together to support talent. Governors get this, mayors get this, and it's clear that we can no longer rely on the federal government to sort of dictate post-secondary policy. States have to take control. So that's one of the most exciting things I see happening. I mean, you've got states like Texas and California and New York leaning into their own talent strategy, which I think is essential. You also see a lot of new data systems. So in California, we have the Cradle to Career data system that recently went live. That's going to give us tremendous insights as to what's going on in communities throughout California, give us opportunities to better connect learning and jobs, to identify talent, and to have the kinds of reforms that we've been hoping to see in state policy for a long time. So I do think that those things are positive. What's not positive in my view is how we think about opportunity in this country and for whom. A state like California, or a state like Texas, or a state like Florida, or New York, or any state on the map, talent comes in all sorts of shapes and sizes, and we can no longer rely on one demographic of learner to provide that talent. Cities and states are going to succeed if they can tap the talent that's in their communities. And so I think that's what's giving me the most gray hair right now, is how we think about talent, how we think about access, how we think about the American dream and what that means today for people of all backgrounds. So that's what I'm fighting to hopefully hang on to, but at the same time, find an opportunity to, get rid of some of the craziness that existed in federal higher ed policy before this moment.
Great. So I'm gonna finish up with a question looking into the future. You mentioned the future and what we're hoping for. You'll have more gray hair. I'll have less hair 5 years from now, and mine will be a little more gray as well, if there's any left. But what do you see? I mean, what's your hope 5 years out, for higher education, and especially for the students within it? I mean, and how do we think about that realistically? What's a realistic set of expectations for 5 years out for higher education as a sector, but more importantly for students that are experiencing higher education?
So, my number one constituent has been, will be, is now the learner. Not institutions, not politicians, not academic leaders, administrators, the learner. And in my view, the future is going to be about giving them more and more agency, more and more on-ramps to skills and post-secondary credentials. So I think that's going to be very, very positive. More personalized learning opportunities. The march that we're on is not changing. It will zig and zag. It will have its ups and downs. But the march toward more agency is happening, and we're not going back. So that gives me great hope. Also, creating more value for the learner. And in creating more value for the learner, we can harness their confidence once again. Higher ed has lost the confidence of the public for many reasons. Some real, some manufactured. But nevertheless, we need to recapture that. The best way we can do that as educators is to be more transparent, show clear value for the investment learners are making, both in terms of their time, their money, and their hopes, and hold ourselves accountable to ensuring that we fulfill the promise that we are putting out there to them in all of our marketing, that if you come to our institution, we're going to make you a better person. Well, let's make sure that we do that. And in doing so, I think higher ed will be in a much better place 5 years from now.
Thank you. And thanks for bringing up the point of investing in time. Time is an investment. And I appreciate your time today that you took to invest in this conversation. It's been enlightening. It's great to see you again. And I thank you for your participation. Appreciate it.
It's great to be with you, David. Thanks for having me.
Well, that's it for today's episode of It's About Time. But the conversation doesn't stop here. Hearing from leaders like Eloy reminds me that affordability isn't just a policy challenge, it's about creating real opportunities for students in every community. If today's discussion sparked an idea for you, share it with a colleague or a friend who cares about the future of higher education. And be sure to join us next time for more bold ideas, candid conversations, and solutions that always put students first.